Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Beware the Fae and all the promises that she may give you. But we do have a Bretonnian versus Tomb Kings matchup here for you today. We have the Bretonnian forces being led by Andy Pandy, and the Tomb Kings are being led by myself. But for the Bretonnian forces, we do have the Fae Enchantress leading the forces, and she is going to be bringing Earthblood, Shield of Thorns, Regrowth, Arcane Conduit, Favor of the Fae, as well as the Mist of the Lady, which will be providing a nice little Mortis Engine effect. Very good Lord for Bretonnia, and very standard kit. For the front line, we are going to be seeing 5 peasant mobs. Just pretty much just very weak chaff infantry, pretty much just to delay the inevitable, while the rest of the Bretonnian forces hammer away at the Tomb King army. For the rest of the army, we do have 2 field trebuchets off in the tree line, and they are going to be protected by some spearmen at arms, one of which per trebuchet. We do have some ranged units being the peasant bowmen. We have one of which being the fire arrows. They'll do very well against the undead with their bonus versus the undead because of their weakness to fire. For the mobility department, we do have 2 knights errant on the far right flank and some grail guardians directly in the center formation, and we have some royal hippogriff knights, a very good unit for Bretonnia. They will be quite a threat for the Tomb Kings. Not a whole lot can deal with them very effectively. We also have 2 paladins kind of off on the Bretonnian left flank, both of which are coming with one of which is coming with Guardian. So that'll be finding a nice little bonus to surrounding lords, so that is a plus 15% physical resist. Usually you will see those flanking the Fae Enchantress herself. Now for the Tomb King army, we have Arkan the Black is leading the way, and he is going to be bringing Spirit Leech, Fate of Buna, the Liber Mortis, and he's going to be bringing Staff of Nagash and the Tomb Blade of Arkan. Very standard kit for Arkan. Pretty much all of the things that he is known best for. He's also going to be flanked by a Tomb Prince, who's also going to be bringing the Guardian ability, much like the Paladins, and a Kemrian War Sphinx is also going to be on the field. For the front line, we do have 2 spearmen, skeleton spearmen, and 3 Tomb Guard. Tomb Guard will do exceptionally well against pretty much anything that Bretonnians can bring. For the back line, we do have a Screaming Skull Catapult and some Necropolis Knights with halberds who will be protecting them. They will do very well against the Bretonnian cavalry forces, though multiple cavalry units will kind of overwhelm them, but they do have the King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion to assist, and they do have a very nice bonus versus large and a poison, which is really what they are best known for. And we have 2 Nehekra horsemen on the far flank to provide a little bit of nobility, but that will be your armies, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get this show on the road, as the artillery from both sides are kind of beginning to open up. The Screaming Skull Catapult is pushing up a little bit, I believe, trying to get in range of the field trebuchets, but I don't know if they will be targeting them. The 2 paladins are getting a little bit ahead, and they are going to be jumping on top of these Nehekron horsemen, pretty much doing some nice free damage. Nehekron horsemen can't really do a whole lot against them, but otherwise the Tomb Kings are kind of pushing into this gap, as the present mobs are looking to put their own pressure on top of the Tomb Kings, though they will not be able to hold up very well against what the Tomb Kings have brought in terms of infantry, especially with the Kemrian War Sphinx kind of pushing that front line engagement. But so far, yeah, those field trebuchets are just kind of firing in. Looks like they've been doing a little bit of damage to these Necropolis Knights. Actually doing a fair amount, but otherwise the Screaming Skull Catapult firing into the back line. They also have a little bit of bonus leadership debuffs, and on top of the firing or fired on by artillery debuff, that is the basic debuff for artillery units, But here is the frontline engagement, which will be won resoundingly by the Tomb Kings. Peasant mobs really not known for their martial prowess, but here are the two paladins jumping on top of the Screaming Skull catapults, and a collapse by the Tomb Kings on top of them, by the Necron Horsemen and the King Akesha Scorpion Legion. And the Libra Mortis also dropped on this entire unit, providing a nice little sustainability. But the Screaming Skull catapults, the field trebuchets are also firing in, which are going to be doing quite a bit of damage onto this blobbed infantry. They are going to be trying to break those paladins, but we'll see how well those goes. And here come the Royal Hippogriff Knights, a very formidable force, who will be getting a nice rear charge off onto the Tomb King forces. But those with the field trebuchets, that is actually going to be fairly good for the Bretonnian forces. But the frontline engagement is not going the way of Bretonnia, as the Tomb Prince is doing quite well. We have a Fate of Buna is actually going down on top of the Grail Guardians, doing quite a bit of damage. And it looks like we have a heal. We are going to be getting a Spirit Leech on top of that, but it looks like there was going to be a heal, and it is a regrowth is going to counteract that. Though it looks like these Grail Guardians are going to be routing from all of that damage from the Fate of Buna and the Spirit Leech. And the front line for Bretonnia is breaking as the Tomb King forces are getting into the rear line. But if we take a look back at what we have for the Tomb Kings, we have these Royal Hippogriff Knights and Paladins are doing quite a bit of work. We do have some Knights Errant coming in, but the Necropolis Knights have been able to counter them. They are a little bit separated from their Paladins, so these Necropolis Knights, but here comes one of the Paladins, and here comes two, but a little too late as the Knights Errant does rout. The Royal Hippogriff Knights will kind of pull away. Fae Enchantress here does need to kind of regroup, kind of stay with her Knights Errant. But otherwise, the Bretonnians are kind of a little bit on the back foot, despite being a little ahead on the balance of power. A lot of their front line is being compromised, and the Tomb King infantry is pushing as far as they can, trying to shut down those field trebuchets as best they can. Here are some Skeleton Spearmen trying to absorb the charge of these Knights Errant as they get some assistance from the Khemrian War Sphinx. The Khemrian War Sphinx will do quite well in that engagement. Khemrian War Sphinx, there isn't a whole lot that can effectively deal with him other than the Royal Hippogriff Knights. You'll often see Gotrek in this engagement, but he is absent from the battlefield on this particular battle. Necron Horsemen finally getting on top of these field trebuchets, being able to shut them down at least for the time being. On the other side, we have a Nushapti summon who has just come down and is going to be shutting down the other unit, as some Tomb Guard are getting into some Peasant Bowmen, while some Spearmen are trying to push off the remains of the Peasant mobs on the Bretonnian far right flank. But otherwise, it looks like things are going better and better for the Tomb Kings, despite being a little bit compromised in the back line. They have been able to do a decent amount of damage. They are routing at least one of the Paladins. We do have King Akesha Scorpion Legion, which doing some good damage to the Fae Enchantress. The Royal Hippogriff Knights should be able to clean things up in the back, even though we do have a couple of Tomb Guard units to assist. And the other Paladin unit is cleaning things up with these Knights Errant, finishing off the Necropolis Knights. But pretty much left for the Bretonnian is a bit more of the single entity variant or monstrous cavalry, while the Tomb Kings do have a bit more in terms of support for the infantry side, as the Khemrian War Sphinx is kind of chasing off a few of the routing units of Bretonnia, kind of trying to get on top of these Peasant Bowmen and Peasant mobs. Pretty much just chase everything off as they are very close to the white line, instantly shattering those Peasant mobs. Necron Horsemen chasing off the Field Trebuchet and Peasant mob, but they will be crumbling into the ground fairly soon. Not a whole lot left for them to add to the battle, as we do have a Grail Guardian unit who is caught by a Spirit Leech, and when they are that low in health, they are very dangerous. Only 5 models, and yeah, that Spirit Leech will be enough to shatter their unit. Well, we do have one last unit of Peasant Bowmen firing in on these Skeleton Spearmen. They will be doing a semi-decent amount of damage. But these spearmen are too close, and they will be able to push those peasant bowmen off fairly quickly. And now we have Arkan and the Tomb Prince with one of the skeleton spearman units, kind of cleaning up shop in the Bretonnian backline. But yeah, for Bretonnia, it is just going to pretty much be this little engagement here where we have both of the paladins, actually, the Fey Enchantress, the Royal Hippogriff Knights, and the Knights Errant. And this martial unit is no slouch in terms of combat prowess, with those two paladins, the Royal Hippogriff Knight and the Knights Errant. And of course, the Fey Enchantress does have her Mortis Engine effect, and they are beelining it for this Cameron War Sphinx, who at the time being is a little isolated, and the Tomb Kings are trying to regroup their forces. They do not want those Royal Hippogriff Knights and the two Paladins to catch this Cameron War Sphinx out of position. It really needs to be regrouped with the Tomb Prince and Arkan himself, and ideally get these Skeleton Spearmen and these Tomb Guards into the fight as well. But here they come. It looks like Arkan and the Tomb Prince are going to be able to rendezvous just in time. But here are the Paladins swooping in to the rear of the Cameron War Sphinx, and the Tomb Kings will collapse upon their position. Tomb Prince having a nice little anti-large bonus. And Arkan is not necessarily a melee combatant, but he is getting a nice Spirit Leech off onto these Knights Errant. With the assistance of the Cameron War Sphinx, they should be able to route those fairly quickly. And here comes the Skeleton Spearmen as well. And as soon as those Tomb Guard come in, that'll be a very nice boon for the infantry department. But now the Fae is also engaged, and she'll be getting a nice little Spirit or Mortis Engine effect on the surrounding forces, though the Liber Mortis has also been cast on this blob of infantry to assist in their sustainability. Now it is going to come down to how lucky the Bretonnians are going to be able to see if they're able to single out these single entities of the Tomb Kings. Really, they need to eliminate Arkan and the Tomb Prince. And the Tomb Prince is getting very low, and he does get his rampage off on all of the surrounding units. So that is going to force pretty much, well, it's not going to force pretty much, it's going to force all of the Bretonnian forces into this engagement here. Everything is forced to engage now with that rampage, and the Tomb Prince is very low himself. He is going to be crumbling, and he's not going to be very long for this world, so his Guardian ability is going to be fading away fairly soon, though that Cameron War Sphinx is doing some very decent work, and a Tomb Blade of Arkan is getting a nice summon off into the midst of this engagement to provide a little bit of chaff for the Tomb Kings. And the Paladin is going to be wavering right now and routing fairly soon, though he does regain a bit of his leadership in the last throes of this engagement. And I don't know if the Royal Hippogriff Knights are going to be able to salvage this battle here. They are quite the formidable foe, but with the Cameron War Sphinx is pretty much at full health. And we do have that summon. Arkan is getting a little low. The Royal Hippogriff Knights could get on top of him, but it looks like army losses are going to be triggering very soon, and that will be our match, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll take a quick look at the after battle report. So yeah, the Screaming Skull Catapult got 53 kills, even though it did get kind of gooned out a bit by the Paladin and the Royal Hippogriff Knights, with the Knights Errant coming in as well. The Grail Guardians got absolutely shut down by a combination of the Feyabuna Spirit Leech and some nice anti-large from that Tomb Prince. But otherwise, yes, so despite that the Tomb Kings did lose their back line, they lost the Screaming Skull Catapult, they lost the King Nikesha Scorpion Legion, and a couple of the Tomb Guard units. They were able to delay those Bretonnian forces long enough so that they weren't able to pretty much salvage the rest of their army, and all of the peasants, spearmen at arms, all of the peasant bowmen, and the field trebuchets just got absolutely eviscerated by what the Tomb Kings had brought. So it was kind of a trade-off, and the Tomb Kings came up on top on that particular trade, and that was all it took to win the day. as they were able to pretty much separate out all of the units, keep routing them off, even though they did lose their mobility fairly early on the separation that the Bretonians had was just a little too much. And for the Bretonnian army, usually you do see Gotrek in this battle. Gotrek is generally a unit that the Tomb Kings have a bit of a hard time dealing with. They don't have any units that are particularly dedicated to dealing with infantry or like single entity infantry units. So something like Gotrek, the Fey Enchantress. When having the paladins up on their flying mounts do make them a large entity, which does provide the Tomb Prince with a nice bonus, as well as the Necropolis Knights and King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion. But otherwise, it was a very fun match. Had a blast playing with Andy Pandy, and that will be all for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.